So, which games should we be playing while stuck at home?
And why are streaming services dropping quality right when we need them most?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award winning network and Australian based support.
Hi there. Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, the podcast where we catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the tech news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined as always by Adam Turner, who's no doubt thrilled by the news that hairdressers can stay open as long as they like right now. Adam, what hair colour do you think suits you best?
Finally, I've been waiting for a chance to experiment. I'm thinking it's time to go with the tight gentleman's perm. I think this might be the time to give it a go, and if it all goes badly, I can just hide away from the world for a while.
Sounds like a plan. And that laugh that you can hear in the background is Biteside editor Seamus Byrne. Seamus, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. It's good to be here.
So, Seamus, what's your post-apocalyptic hairdo plan?
See, I do take my haircuts very seriously. So I was due a haircut last week. Now I'm kind of screwed. And I was joking about maybe doing a charity shave next week. And then my wife vetoed that, basically saying, there's enough other crazy stuff in the world right now. I don't want to have to look at your head shaved too.
Look, I'm personally, obviously, grossly unqualified to comment on hairstyles generally. But what the three of us do know a lot about is gaming with friends and family. And obviously, right now, with Australians being urged to stay home as much as possible, gaming can be a great way not only to socialise with the folks you're actively living with, but also folks who you may not be able to visit easily for some time online. And we're going to dive into a discussion around your best options in a little bit, as well as tips and tricks for getting it all working smoothly shortly. But first of all, the major video streaming services are seeing unprecedented traffic these days for very obvious reasons. But they're doing some odd stuff around that. Adam, what's the story here?
Well, we all laughed last week, I think it was, when Paul Fletcher, the communications minister or whatever, said to Netflix, hey, can you dial down the quality? And we're like, yeah, well, that's what happens when you build a crappy second rate NBN. It can't handle Netflix and everything else. But in his defense, they're actually doing that all around the world. So governments in Europe and I think the US as well have asked the likes of Netflix to just, dial it down a bit and give us a bit ease off on the bandwidth. And we heard Supertom say last week about how much the bandwidth needs have jumped or demand has jumped. So Netflix has said, yeah, okay, we can do that. They're aiming to reduce traffic by about 25%. But the good thing is they're not just going slash and burn. All right, there's no 4K, there's no HD. You're all slumming it in SD. What they're doing is just saying we're going to dial down the bit rate on all of those. So you'll still get the same resolution, lose a little bit of detail in the picture. To be honest, your average punter probably won't even notice.
So, I'm really curious about this because it strikes me if Netflix could do this, why not do it already if it's at a level where consumers aren't going to notice?
Because fussy bastards like us will notice. Like, yeah, basically that's what it comes down to. What they're saying is, look, desperate times call for desperate measures. So that 4K Netflix, beautiful thing that you're watching, if you've got a big ass OLED TV and you're the kind of person who stands there with a magnifying glass, you will notice the difference. But it won't be too bad. And like I said, it's better than sending everyone back to the SD sin bin.
So, Seamus, I know you've been having some NBN woes this week. Would a dial down in streaming quality really hit you hard right now?
Um, I as somebody who look, I'm always pragmatic about this stuff in that I have a 4K TV, thoroughly enjoy it. It I rarely feel like I'm seeing a vast difference between HD and the 4K experience, but I do feel like this is a great example for that classic argument. We had it way back in the early days of digital photo cameras, and it's that idea that it's not about the megapixels, that everybody loves to kind of escalate those megapixel wars. I'm also a massive ranter when it comes to the fact that 8K is a giant joke on the
Yep.
whole TV industry. And yeah, this is that kind of question where you're like, bit rate is what matters. This is the kind of thing where I think you're totally right that at the moment, most people, they're not going to really notice sort of that difference. Um, but when you talk about, oh, like, Stan offers 4K streaming and so does Netflix and so does Amazon or like whoever has it, that never means that they're all delivering the same quality of experience on your television set. So it's something for people to keep in mind and take as a lesson from one of these sorts of moments, that reduction in traffic, it's totally a thing they can do, and it totally means it's a thing that they can elevate at other times as well. Uh, so don't just kind of go, well, yeah, they've all ticked the 4K box, therefore they must all be doing exactly the same thing, because there's a very good chance that some of them are, skimping out on this in different ways. And I think also just to touch on that bigger question as well, which is that there's lots of places around the world that have kind of asked for this and that these companies are doing it for, but it's all the kinds of countries that essentially have a very wide mix of technologies delivering their broadband, not the kinds of countries where they have full fiber optic networks, like, say, we were first promised. Because I've checked in with some friends in places like Singapore and Hong Kong. And I'm like, are you guys having any of these sorts of issues with people at home, given that everybody's still sort of under similar lockdown type scenarios? And they're like, no, no, this is not a question for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I suppose Netflix is not the only one doing this, and they all use adaptive streaming anyway.
Yeah.
I guess one tip to pass on to people if they are finding that they're struggling on an NBN connection, where the device supports it, is you could always tell it, no, just give me the SD version, or even, I guess, dial down your plan. Adam, do you think there's a big reason right now to pay for that, 4K Stan or Netflix plan?
I think there is because I think that you will still be getting 4K. But the other thing is, and this is the beauty specifically of how Netflix's adaptive streaming works, is it constantly adjusts, it constantly checks your broadband connection and adjusts to give you the best picture it can. And you'll see that because often on Netflix, if you press play on a TV show, it'll look a bit shabby for about 10 or 15 seconds and then it pops and it gets really sharp. During that time, it's been just checking to see how fast can I send it to you without it buffering and stuttering. So what will happen is if you're getting 4K and they're dialing down that 4K a little bit, they can still send you HDR, for example, which adds more contrast in the shadows. And on a big TV, I think HDR is actually more important than the raw resolution. So, but if you drop down from a 4K plan to a HD plan, you just won't get HDR at all because it's not part of your package. So when you allow for HDR and Dolby Atmos sound and stuff they can still send through, it's definitely worth staying on that 4K plan, I'd say. Unlike YouTube, which has decided that, right, no, SD for everyone, no HD for you. The whole world, I think, for a month. That's just that's harsh, but understandable.
Also, it's worth noting that some of them tie the number of screens you can use to
True.
which tier of plan you're on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it might be that feeling of going, well, okay, maybe I don't need 4K as much right at this moment, but I still need four separate devices to be able to watch. And that's where some of them have put those two things
Yeah.
together.
More than ever. I need four streams around the house. Yeah.
Well, actually, that ties very nicely into the other bit of streaming news which has emerged, in fact, today, which is Foxtel saying, "Hey, you can have even more screens and even more content." Adam, what's the story there?
Yeah, I saw that Foxtel have said with their online streaming, they're going to add some extra channels and packages and things that you couldn't get before. I wasn't sure, I wasn't across the fact that they'd added extra screens, but that's good to know as well. Um, but yeah, they're just realizing that people want to get more out of this than ever. But also, I think they're realizing how much pressure they're in. I've had a few people just in the last couple of weeks, nothing to do with the virus, come to me and say, "Oh, we're ditching Foxtel. We're looking at moving to KO or something like that." So they really are starting to bleed viewers, and losing the football is bang going to hit them right where it hurts. So they
Yeah.
right now need to do everything they can to still be appealing, to still encourage people to hand over their money.
I would have thought the loss of sports generally. I can think of one sport which I might get to in a minute that is somehow still struggling on. But sports generally is a huge blow to Foxtel's value proposition, which is
But
presumably
especially
why
the
they've done
footy,
this.
especially the AFL and the
Oh, that's
NRL.
right. You're in Victoria. I forgot.
The real football and the NRL are both finished for the year. And that really is a kick in the balls for Foxtel. And they've got no, Game of Thrones. Westworld is back, which is awesome because I love Westworld. First episode was a bit slow. Second episode blew my mind. So I'm there for that, but that's about it, really.
And I know there's been some talk, and I'm not super across this, but Shay, I suspect you are as well. There's been some talk about some of these professional sporting leagues taking up their digital equivalents in an esports kind of way.
Yeah, this has actually been amazing that a whole bunch of, 'cause, right? Like, I mean, it's funny. The Olympics has obviously now been postponed until next year. The Olympics as a movement has always sort of said, well, maybe we have a partnership with esports, but esports don't really have a place here. And maybe digital versions of actual normal sports, which has always kind of made me be like, really? Why would you bother doing that? But now suddenly it's like, hey, Olympics, you might have been able to use some of those esports this year to cover the missing track and field. Though, of course, again, I'm sure, Alex, as a massive retro gaming fan, we could probably throw a nice classic Summer Games slash track and field experience slash decathlon, all those classic
Was it
arcade games.
Daley Thompson's decathlon? Was that the game? The
Yeah, yeah,
English guy?
that's one of the
Oh,
look.
God, I just had a big
I
flashback.
I admit, as the regular listeners will know, I'm not a big sports guy. I would totally tune
No.
in just to see whoever the modern equivalent of Usain Bolt is, just sitting there
Exactly.
hammering at buttons to try and run faster in track and field.
And
That
so
would be awesome.
yeah, it's like this is what's actually then happened this past week with a whole bunch of these sort of sports aligned esports. FIFA, the big soccer game, that has professional leagues happening, all the time. Even a lot of major football teams, like here in Australia, alongside the A League, they hold an E League where all of the teams actually have recruited FIFA players to play as that team's representative in a tournament. But then, and there's similar things that happen over in European leagues as well. And what has happened though with the shutdown of the soccer over in Europe has been a bunch of teams have gone, hey, why don't we, like, for charity, nominate an actual player from one of our teams to then play against other teams' nominated players? And of course, suddenly then, like you said with the summer games type stuff, you're like, okay, it's one thing when it's some esports pro I've never heard of, sort of taking on some other esports pro I've never heard of. But then if you're just a random viewer on the street and you heard, oh, you know, some kind of, superstar player from, my favorite English Premier League team is going to play against a Spanish league guy in FIFA for charity. Yes, I want to watch this, and make sure you've got cameras pointed at them so we can laugh about it, because that's just a brilliant part of it. And then we've seen in the motor racing, which is also one of, the most one-to-one video game experiences, when you have a proper racing rig set up. And of course, all of these, pro drivers spend a lot of time in a simulator running the tracks that they're going to race, on the next weekend. So last weekend, F1 essentially had a virtual version of the Bahrain race. And, again, a few more laughs around the edges of it, but mostly these people, are still seriously competitive people who want to win whatever they do. And they took it very seriously, and heaps of people wanted to watch. Same happened in NASCAR over in the US. And it turned out that the NASCAR race had as big an audience as the biggest event on their schedule last year.
Wow.
So people are desperate to watch this stuff. Supercars here in Australia is also doing the same thing. So it's just great to see this stuff happening.
And I mean, it beats some of the alternatives. The weird one right now is professional wrestling, and I know people are probably screaming, "But that's not a sport; it's all fake." Yes, I know. But what they're doing at the moment is, and especially because we're leading up to the biggest event of the year, WrestleMania, they're doing empty arena shows. They're basically doing it out of their performance center, more or less their gym.
Yeah.
They're just having their wrestlers come out with no audience, no applause, and none of that back and forth theater that's such a huge part of it. And it's one of those car crash things that's kind of interesting to watch once, and then you realize, wow, this really loses a lot without an audience.
Now, Alex, I'm adoring what is happening in the wrestling right now. Particularly, I'm mostly seeing it just through clipped moments that are being shared on Twitter and the like. And one where somebody put the Twin Peaks music in the background. And suddenly you go, this is performance art. This is actually
It
amazing to watch.
This
It's
is why I watch it. It totally is performance art. Um, WWE's biggest competitor, I'm getting slightly off track here, AEW did a much better job of it by simply putting all the wrestlers who weren't wrestling in that moment in the audience so that the bad guys would cheer the bad guys and the good guys would cheer and they'd sing along with the theme tunes. It was glorious, but I don't know that it's got legs over the whole season of watching it. And I wonder if that's the same thing for sport. Would you tune in for NASCAR or FIFA or whatever every week if it's just digital games?
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely a novelty factor right at this moment. It's funny because I guess there's so few kind of Formula One races through the year that I do feel like there's something about that might mean people, do well. Well, I guess right. It's what is the hardcore fan going to keep watching versus what the more casual fan is going to keep watching. So there's definitely going to be some big differences there.
And I think that's a great point, actually, to segue to the other topic we're going to talk about this week, which is, in fact, of course, gaming. Because Australians are being urged to stay at home as much as possible, again, and that's a really good, sensible piece of advice, just in case it hadn't sunk into you, dear listener. But we're all sort of looking for new ways to keep ourselves and our families entertained while we're stuck at home. And this could well be gaming's moment to shine. Shay, have you got any particular recommendations?
Yeah, look, I definitely if you've got kids in the house, I think it's something you'll touch on a bit more shortly, but looking at kind of Minecraft server type options is a really sort of cool thing to do to keep people together when they can't be catching up with each other in person. I am a massive World of Warcraft nerd, so they just launched a 100% experience point boost. Um, most people at this stage in the life cycle of that game where there is a new expansion coming in a few months, most people have maximum level characters for their main characters, but it's a great excuse to kind of dive back in and create a new character and just kind of zoom through the levels and enjoy that whole process all over again, given that people are looking for things to do. We've also really started to ramp up our home board game collection here. So, I feel like it does feel like this is one of those moments that people like ourselves were like, I was born ready. I'm ready to
This is my
play
moment.
games all the time. Why not?
Well, Adam, I know you've been having an interesting time
Oh,
with, in fact, Minecraft of late.
yeah. Well, I amongst my friends and the people who live in the few families who live in this end of my street, I am the tech guy. So I thought, and all of my neighbors are working from home. So, and they've all got kids as well. So they're trying to balance that out. And I thought, right, I've got my thing I can bring to the table. I can help set up the online gaming. So we're playing Rocket League with some kids, and I had to go through some new territory for me. We've got it on the PS4. Some other kids have got it on the Xbox, so we had to figure out PlayStation Now Live, whatever, an Xbox Gold. But we got all that working, and we're playing against each other, and that's all good. And I thought, right, I'll set up a Minecraft server for them all because they've all got around in my lounge room and played Minecraft before on iPads, and they've all got a copy in the iPad. But of course, you need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. You can't. That doesn't necessarily work online. So the easy way to do that, which I've done before, is you set up a Minecraft server hosted somewhere, and then everybody connects to that. So the good thing about that is you're not reliant on one person having the server running. It's not like if my kids aren't playing, the other kids can't get in. Everybody can get in, do their own thing. We'll put a whitelist on it to make sure that strangers don't come in, and we'll be good. And all the kids in the street can do that, and at the same time talk on Discord or Skype or something. So they've got that thing going. And this is like, okay, it's going to be fine. We had a few teething problems with the first server, so we ditched that and moved to another one. And my son, let's call him Mars because that's the name we used to use for him when he was little, and we didn't want him to know we were talking about him, which didn't last long because he's pretty bright. But Mars is the oldest of all these kids. Our kids are older than most of our friends' kids. So Mars has declared himself the admin for all this stuff, which is fine. He's helping set up a Discord server for school. He's helping set up a Discord server for all the neighborhood kids. And I've put him in charge of this Minecraft server. So one of the kids, let's call him Thor, right? So Thor's in there with some of the others doing his own thing, and then suddenly one of the other kids comes to Matthew, the admin, and says, I have a problem. So what originally happened is they built some stuff, and then Thor came along and he's in primary school, so he's still young. Thor came along, tore down a lot of their stuff, built some new stuff, used up all their iron, and just they weren't very happy with that. And I think they told him that. Next thing you know, Thor turns up, kills one of the other kids, takes all of his stuff, and runs away. Now,
Has Thor thought
meanwhile,
about moving into politics?
well, maybe, yeah. And then so I said to Mars, like, is this like where did this come from? And he tells me the backstory about how they've been arguing. And he also said there's been some mysterious fires lit on our island and the
Hmm.
trees. And every time we ask Thor, he's like, I know nothing about it. I don't even have things to start fire. And other kids like, dude, I saw you with some flint and whatever. So this kid's been lighting fires and killing people and taking their stuff. And it's like, it's 2 days and it's freaking Lord of the Flies already. Like, God, what are we going to do? So I said to my son, right, all right, Mars, you're the admin. Like, this is your big test. You got to step up and figure out how to sort this out. So Mars is like, all right, you've got to apologize and give all that kid's stuff back, or else I will port you to him, kill you on the spot, and then he can take all your things and you'll be out of the game. So we're still waiting to see how this plays out. But the nuclear option is that we tell Thor's mum.
Yep.
And I would literally be able to hear Thor's mum shouting from my kitchen. She will tear him a new one and then tear that one a new one. So we've got to wait and see how it goes. But I didn't like of all the things because Mars hadn't turned off PvP, which is what lets players hurt each other. Hadn't turned off spread fire because who thinks you need to do that when you're playing with different? Yeah. So Mars is going through locking down all the ways that people can kill each other. Whenever they're thinking, what do we do with this kid? Like, do we lock him in a glass cage so he can see us play but not play? And so yeah, they've got to basically come up with their own justice system now.
Look, it's educational. Mad. They're learning civics.
They really are. And no one saw that coming.
They could always turn off. I was just going to say they could turn off PvP for everyone except him. In that would mean everyone else can kill him, but he can't kill anybody else. That's his ultimate jail, surely.
It might come to that.
I guess actually this does also bring up a point around, especially around kids, and with kids being significantly encouraged to stay home from school. I don't know, Adam, where you are in Victoria, they're on full holidays right now. That I think it's wise to, within reason, loosen the constraints you might have around gaming and your kids because they can't do a whole bunch else. What I've been exploring a lot of this week is the more kind of social side of gaming, the stuff that you can potentially do with parents or grandparents or other non-gaming types. Specifically, a lot of the stuff being done by Jackbox Games. These are the guys who used to and sort of still do You Don't Know Jack. They've actually got one of their full games, Drawful 2, is actually free on Steam at the moment. I've been playing a lot of that, and it's more or less Pictionary. People understand when I say it's Pictionary; they kind of get what I mean. But you can play it online. I've just been using Google Hangouts to share the screen the game's running on. Everyone else just logs in on a web browser on their phone for the actual game controller and drawing. And critically, you're not just sitting there kind of silently playing a game as you might do if you were kind of playing a COD or something like that. You are talking and chatting and laughing, and you get that social interaction that you can't get otherwise. And I think that's hugely valuable.
Yeah, and look, I think that company over the years, I don't know if it's still the same company, but I know they used to be called Jellyvision, that made You Don't Know Jack. But they even for a long time had another game online called no, the name slips my mind, but it was an anagram game. And it was a great kind of multiplayer, game experience. And they just seem like they have over the years done such a good job. And indeed, I think the concepts even related to that anagram game probably turn up in some of the Jackbox experiences that are sort of in there. But they've done such a good job of social gaming in those sorts of interesting ways. So, in ways that even means, I know like on Twitch, someone can stream a Jackbox game and share a code with their audience so that like everyone can be participating without needing to have everybody on camera doing things at the same time and create these sort of really large scale social moments. So, they've been, just such a clever game company at creating these sorts of super fun and sometimes a little bit kind of not necessarily family friendly, but a lot of their games can be dialed back into family friendly territory.
Yeah, although you've got to be very careful with the online Twitch aspect. I was actually playing one of the Jackbox games with Alex Walker from Kotaku over the weekend, and a group of other people, and it had been left open, and we had a complete random internet stranger with a very unfortunate username turn up, and it was immediately a case of right, back off, cancel, quit,
Yeah.
right, lock it down to just us. So maybe not inviting the world in case Thor or Thor's even less nicely named friend shows up.
And look, I did have a Minecraft tip, and that it's something that we've done because my daughter for her birthday last year wanted to set up a Minecraft server. So we sort of had a lot of thinking about it, and I decided I didn't want to have to do the legwork. So I researched companies that you can just pay to host through, and now like Minecraft itself, you can do realms. And pay them to sort of just host a thing for you, but it also means it runs on a very kind of there's a few mods, but not many. We went with a company called Apex Hosting, and they've been great. And they have Australian servers, like so they sort of have locations all around the world. But through that, we were able to, she was able to sort of research a bunch of the mods that she wanted installed that they sort of had available, and they do even things like the daily backups and stuff, so that if somebody decides to try to burn everything to the ground, you can just roll back the server a day and everything is magically back where it was. So nice features like that. And one of the things that she has used on her server is it runs a mod called Factions, and it means that actually that within the whole uh, you know world that has been on that put on that server, that people can claim different territories, and it means that someone who doesn't belong to that territory they can't build, they can't damage anything within that area. And so it does create this great way where people can still kind of go to certain places and have little PvP moments and stuff if they want to, but that within their claimed territory, and they can give it a name and they can kind of make it their whole kind of
That's
vibe, whatever
awesome.
they want it to be. But yeah, just a really kind of nice mod for giving people a little bit of both options there to have their little safe space as well.
I can vouch for Apex. That's the one that I'm using as well, and that's the second one that I'm using because the first one that I used, uh, while I don't think they were American company, they said they had Australian servers, but it was very buggy and often we couldn't get in and it was slow.
Yeah.
And every time I spoke to them, they're like, "Oh, there's a problem with the server. We'll move you to another server." But the thing I noticed is then I moved to Apex and it's been a lot better. But having not hosted a Minecraft server for a long time, I wasn't sure about how much RAM and whatever I needed to throw at it. So the first mob I went with, their lowest spec one was like 400 meg of RAM, I think, and that was supposed to cater up to 6 players. Now I'm probably going to have 6 in there, so I stepped up and went for maybe 500 meg of RAM, supposedly 8 players. It was so laggy that like you would move and other players wouldn't see you move for at least a minute.
Oh.
Like it was just ridiculous. And it was very strange. Like the skins weren't appearing properly, and I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. So I gave them a couple of chances, and then I said, no, I want my money back, and they gave it to me, no questions, which
Oh,
tells me
that's
they
good.
knew they were doing the wrong thing. But when I moved to Apex and I looked at a few others first, the entry level plan had 1 gig of RAM. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if maybe these people were offering plans that they just knew, well, they should have known were no good. So if you're having trouble, try upping your RAM a little bit. But yeah, we've been with Apex now for about 24 hours, maybe, and it's been behaving much better than the other one.
Yeah. I think we've only had one or two little incidents with things like the subdomain stopped working, which, definitely is a hassle when, you've given it to other kids and then they're like, they
Yeah,
can't get in, and it's hard to tell another kid, here, just put in this IP address instead.
yeah,
um, but no, overall, it's been pretty smooth, and we've been with them for most of 6 months now. So yeah, it's,
yeah.
been pretty happy.
And what you were saying before about multi levels of interaction while playing the game, that's what I've been doing here as well. Like when the kids were playing Rocket League and then when the kids are playing Minecraft, we've also set it up so they can talk to each other via Skype at the same time. Although Skype's really not that great. I think we might move to Discord or something else. But anyway, so they can talk to each other while they're playing because, as you say, it adds that extra social level of interaction. I've also been
Yeah.
doing that with my family. Now, my parents are in their 70s and my wife's mum is almost in her 70s, not a couple of months to go. and they've all had their health problems, so we need to be really careful. And my parents decided about 2 weeks ago to put themselves into lockdown, which retrospectively looks like a really smart idea. So we have traditionally once a week gone to my parents' house after school for afternoon tea and sometimes stay for dinner. And once a week we go to my mother-in-law's house after school and stay for dinner. And we've had to stop doing that. So it's like, well, okay, let's talk on Skype because my brother lives in Hong Kong with his wife. So my family's already used to doing that. And my sister's brother lives on the other side of town. So my mother-in-law's already used to doing that as well. So we've now got a setup in the afternoons where my family sits around one side of the table and has my MacBook in front of us, and my parents or my mother-in-law, her house, sit on one side of the table and have a screen in front of them, and we have afternoon tea and talk, and it's like we're facing each other on the table. But I've also then gone and found some online Uno games. The one in Steam was terrible, but we found another Uno game where they can all join in and play online. So what they're doing is they've all got a computer in front of them and they're playing Uno on this game, but also there's a screen in front as well. So they're playing Uno, but they can trash talk each other over Skype at the same time.
That's
And it took them
brilliant.
about 10 minutes to get the hang of the game. And then once they got the hang of it, I left the room and left them to it. And they, just the whole typical, Nan's cheating again and whatever. And it just totally took off. And they played for an hour. And it's exactly what I envisioned. You just forget about the technology. And it's the same with the afternoon tea thing. If you make yourself a hot drink and sit down at the table and talk to someone on the other side of the table, you will forget about the technology much sooner and just engage in a normal conversation. And for my parents and my mother-in-law, who are used to having us around once a week and now can't spend time with anybody, I think that is particularly valuable to them.
Yeah, I've been advocating a lot for this idea of trying to think sometimes of video calling as a window rather than as, this
Yes.
official phone call thing that
Yep.
needs to have a start and a finish, but that if you casualize it a lot more, and I think that's happening a lot right now. And I think it's a really
Yeah.
great long term thing now where people are going to learn that it's like, oh, you can just turn it on and just chat. Like, and you don't have to stay actively tuned into it the whole time. You can just have it sort of sitting there on a bench and just chit chat while you're making dinner or making a meal or, or playing a game or sharing a drink, like all these kind of Zoom happy hours and all this stuff that's going on. So it's kind of a really positive trend to see that idea of people just going, oh, yeah, you just flick on a camera and then you're allowed to just kind of have a shared moment in time, not have to think of the 5 things you meant to talk about and then hang up. So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't even need that much bandwidth to make this happen either. I was
No.
playing a game with my brother Gus, who obviously has been a guest on the show a number of times last night, and it was running okay, and we finished up, and it was only after I hung up that I suddenly remembered, hang on, he's actually still only on an ADSL connection, and I could still get
Yeah.
video going on that. Not great. Would have been better on a faster NBN connection, but it worked. You can make a lot out of a little.
And also we had a new experience in my house last night. My wife and my son had their guitar lesson over Zoom. We hooked up my wife's notebook so the guitar lesson teacher could see them both and see the guitars. And we threw him up on the TV and they went on for half an hour. And I think, again, they forgot about the technology after 5 minutes and it worked really well. And that was the guitar teacher's idea because the students have already paid for like a term's worth of
Yeah.
lessons. And the
Yeah.
teacher's like, well, okay, this is what we can do to try and make this work. And they're not beginners, thankfully. They've been having lessons for 18 months and they're pretty good. It would be very hard to have your first few lessons that way. But if you already know what you're doing, it actually works really well.
Yeah, I mean, my son had a piano lesson yesterday over Zoom, and the one thing that I've noticed, I heard a story about that shows it doesn't work very well. Of course, is choral singing, because
Oh,
someone wanted
yeah.
to try to get them together, but that's where you notice the latency problem. And
It
I was
turns
joking,
into a round.
yeah, and I was joking the other day saying that is clearly the perfect example of where 5G could prove itself,
Yeah.
given its latency claims. That if instead of always focusing on gaming and things, they need to get a, remote choir going over 5G to show just how silky smooth that could be. One other thing that when we were touching on the esports stuff before, but when people are looking for other things to do, and there's no better. Well, I was going to say there's no better shared experience than Twitch. There really are. There's much better shared experiences than Twitch. But duked.gg is this new website. It's been around since late last year, and it's a great place where you just get like a video wall of all the different esports that are happening right now and a calendar of upcoming events. It's always been hard over the years to find what exactly is happening in tournaments and things like that. And they have just kind of produced this nice experience to just know I can go there and I'm going to see everything that's on right now and coming up soon. And so, yeah, I think that's been just one of those nice things that I've started tuning in on in the background and being able to then, tell other people is happening so that I can then try to kind of synchronize a bit of that conversational buzz when I'm deciding I want to watch some esports.
I also feel like I should get my retro gaming hat on. Regular listeners, again, will know it's a big passion of mine. Little bit tricky, of course, to go out and browse a shop, although you could obviously order stuff online. Being realistic, most people are probably just going to illegally emulate. But there's one
Hey,
really
you
easy
say
thing.
that like it's a bad thing.
Look, I actually think it is. Maybe not for the reasons you're thinking. Not
I just
so
wanted
much
to
looking
poke
at
the bear. Sorry, I just wanted to poke the bear.
But maybe not from the legal perspective so much as from the fact that when people do that, they always download 50,000 games or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you ignore stuff and you don't play stuff for long enough.
Yeah,
The
that's a good
easy
point.
thing to do around this, though, especially if you've got gamers in your house who are happy to do it, and Adam and I have done this, and probably may not get to do this year, is to do a high score challenge. Go back to some of those old classic games that were just focused around score. And I'm thinking of your Pac-Mans, your Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, that kind of era of gaming, and just do a simple high score challenge. All you
Pro
need is a
tip.
piece of paper to write them down.
Pro tip, don't do this against Alex. I think 1942 is the only game I've beaten him in. Maybe Wonder Boy. So, yeah, if you're not up against a Kidman, you'll be fine.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks for Seamus for making time to stay home for the show this week.
Yes, look, I really went out of my way to find time to sit at my desk in my office, as usual.
So, Shay, where can folks find your writing and indeed yourself online?
So on Twitter, I'm at Seamus, and then most of my efforts now revolve around Byteside. So byteside.com, lots of podcasts there, and at Byteside on the Twitter.
Awesome. And of course, you can catch up with us on Twitter at VerticalHoldAU or through the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And thanks again, everyone, for listening. We know it's a tough time out there, so hang in there, hang tough. We'll see you again soon. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.